Greetings, Mark Garang here, publisher of The Sun, and today is another installment of our interviews with local candidates. Joining me are Jason Fougere and Randy Davison, school board candidates. Jason, Randy?
Hi, Mark.
How you doing?
Good afternoon.
We're good? Okay. There are 2 seats, just to give viewers an idea where we are. There are 5 of you running, and there are 2 seats available. There are 5 of you running for 2 3-year seats. And viewers can check on Valavision or the Sun's website for an interview with Alex Loth, Matt Haley, and Michaela Clement. And there's also a 1-year seat available for 2 other candidates. So let's get going. So let's start off. The topic of the day is probably school closing. Jason, why don't you start? What do you think? Should we close the school and when?
Well, sure. I didn't know if we were going to introduce each other.
All right, let's do an intro
first. But
okay,
I just thought it was important to maybe explain to some of the voters that are out there about who I am a little bit. So I did have a little bit of a canned thing to keep it narrow.
Okay.
But my background is I have a degree in behavior science, and that's what I spend pretty much all of my time doing is studying behavior. I have corporate business experience in my background. And then a little bit of history of me from Kennett High School is that I took the ASVAB, so the military entrance exam, and the feedback I got from that was I could basically do anything I wanted in the military based on those scores. I chose to attempt to become a social studies teacher, so I took the praxis exam, and I scored well above the percentile. I was in the top there. And then I wanted to be
what do you do now?
Oh, but I took this praxis 2 for social studies also, and I didn't study. I passed that as well.
Okay, so we don't need all the details about different things that you studied.
So yeah, now I'm just a leadership professional, and I work here and there.
Okay. Randy, what do you do except being on the school board?
Okay. So I've been fortunate to go into the field of education. I knew since I was in 3rd grade I was going to be an educator. A lot of experience.
How many years on the school board?
15 years on the school board, and before that I served 5 years in the town on the budget committee. Dick O'Brien was the one that actually got me involved in going on the school board. So I have a lot of history, I have a lot of knowledge. I've been on every committee that you can imagine on the school board. I believe continuity on the school board is important. One concern that I have is people that do get on the school board don't complete their terms.
All right, so I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Why don't we just go through some of the issues, and both of you will have a couple of minutes at the end to summarize, to restate things if you think you've forgotten something during these questions, and also give your closing statement. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
All right, okay, so let's go. Closing, let's go back to that. School closing. Jason, what do you think? Should we close one, and if so, when? And which one? So there's like a three-part question.
Yeah, so we've been on this for 20 years at least, since I've been back in the Valley. We have been talking about school closing, and so it's been a massively interesting roller coaster with the school closing topic, and I certainly threw my hat in the ring there early on, and at first it was, we're not closing any school. No, everybody was, we're not closing anything. And then all of a sudden it was, now we're going to close Pine Tree. So I don't really have a preference in terms of...
Do you think we should close the school? Is it time?
So we for sure, the voters have the new per rate that they're dealing with, which is a massive increase on their taxes. I think we are resilient enough. I think our teachers are talented and skilled enough that we can absorb whatever modifications to buildings and facilities that they have to put up with. I personally moved to a new school around that elementary school age where I came from, and it was the most exciting thing going on. We were going to the new school. It had artwork, it had staircase, so there's plenty of positives. But
so do you think we should close the school? I mean, outside of saying that it's probably going to happen because that's what voters are going to decide, but I mean, maybe or maybe not, but do you think, I mean, just asking you personally, do you think we should close the school? Given the fact that we have the new reval, which you alluded to, and just in general, low census.
It is a rough community out there right now in terms of whether we should close a school or not close a school, and it seems to be a barrier to education right now.
Okay, so
what is
on it? I'm just trying to get your answer, just kind of a yes or no. Do you think we should close the school?
Yeah.
Okay, Okay, that's a good start. Randy, what do you think?
Mark, 100% we should be closing a school in Conway. Nationally, state of New Hampshire, that the enrollments have gone down to the point where neighborhood schools are something that they're not existent anymore. I think I alluded to the fact that I came from Barre, Vermont. They used to have 10 elementary schools. They collapsed them, they're down to 1. Same population as Conway, around 10,000 people. It's not fiscally sound, it's not educationally sound. The fact that we've gone down by 400 students.
Because I think we're at
is an
2,000
issue.
and we're close to
Yes,
1,500.
when the new school opened, the high school,
Right.
we've gone down from 956 kids to around a little bit below 700 at the high school alone.
Right.
Bartlett, let's see, the other one I looked into was Freedom, Madison. All of their schools
Right.
the population has gone down. Tamworth. So I think that that's a real issue. But in Conway, we absolutely should be closing a school due to the fact that the re-eval came out. I know of people that, and I have friends in the banking industry that, like lamplighters, it's renamed, but
Right.
they have people that are going to the banks having to get loans out to pay for the taxes because they can't afford the taxes on a mobile home.
What do you think about, both of you, what do you think about the idea that some people are saying that if we why are we closing a school now? We're building lots of housing, right? There are hundreds of units coming online in the next 2 or 3 years. And so basically we're gonna have more kids, we might need it.
Mark, it's not going to happen. The Valley would have to produce at least 100 kids per year in order to keep these 3 elementaries. And the fact that what needs to happen, being on the facilities committee, the roofing, the windows, just the maintenance of these buildings is just astronomical.
All right, so Jason, what do you think about that concept of, hey, let's hold on to the schools because we have more kids, and if we are gonna close a school, which one? Do you think?
So I believe that we do have an influx of people coming into the Valley. I mean, we're building a new, there's 5 new hotels. I don't know how many new hotels. We've got new businesses, and I had been talking about we've been opening a business seemingly every month, and then we're losing 3 residences. So the dynamic for a school was like we're pushing families out of the Valley, and there's not enough families to keep schools open. So that was my feeling initially anyway. But we do have workforce housing and other types of housing. I know Settlers Green is working on possibly a project. So I would hope in my heart that we're attracting families and community back to North Conway and Conway. But if that's not the case, then there's no reason for a school.
All right.
Okay,
So we'll leave that theory behind. What about a school if you had to choose? Now the school board, Randy, has tasked the administration to recommend which school to close, correct?
Correct. Being on the board for 15 years,
Right.
I think that the real issue that I believe, and I've watched the other candidates on your screen. I've done my homework. I've been on the board long enough. Me personally, in my opinion, it should not be put in the laps of a new superintendent coming into this district. I think that right now that the decision should be made, and I am for one where I believe the voters of Conway should be voting for the default budget.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you there. Let's just stay on the school for a minute, if that's okay, Randy. So Kevin Richard, I know, has been on the record because
Do you want me to tell you the school that I would close?
That was the question.
100%, I would close John Fuller due to the fact where it's located. It's in a commercial zone. It's got the dwindling in population. We've had to bus students into John Fuller, the transportation piece.
So what would you do, John Fuller, if you close it? Sell it? Sell the property?
That's to be decided by the new school board. Mark, the reason why I ran, I was not going to run again, but I firmly believe if you get the certain candidates on that board that are running right now, that I've seen so much flip-flopping on this
You're
board.
saying if we get new candidates, they could reverse the decision.
100%, and
All right,
that's
so
one of the reasons why I ran again.
All right, so
and I've been elected 5 terms,
yeah.
15 years. I think I've got the background.
Yeah.
I've done great things, I believe, on the school board. I have the history. I have an education degree.
Okay,
I have a leadership
okay.
degree.
No,
I can probably
no,
tell
okay,
you.
okay.
I should have ran for
let's
the
say-
superintendent.
Well, you should have, and you're on this. We can get to that in a minute, Randy, and we can save the closing statement for that. So,
Yeah.
Jason, what school if you had to choose?
Well, I'm going by culture all day long, every day, and John Fuller has the top culture in our district.
Top culture.
Top culture by far.
And what does that mean?
It means the approach with students, the approach with leadership is absolutely critical and valuable. I think it's a model for the community, and I think it's inspiring students to do better and be better on testing. And I think so. In terms of culture, John Fuller is the one I would keep. And Conway Elementary hasn't really been on anybody's list. So
Right.
I think location-wise, it strategically needs
Right.
to be there because of the
But the
reach.
culture in John Fuller, I mean, you're talking about teachers. You're not going to talk about
Oh,
physical
and principal.
building.
And-
I mean,
and-
the administration and all that, but that's not the building.
Right, it's not the building. So to me, close Pine Tree or John Fuller, that's a financial question in terms of figuring out which school to close. So, but if I wanted to put everybody into one building, it would be wherever that John Fuller culture is.
All right, cool.
Mark, so the fact that, we've had these public hearings that they've been coming, I find it interesting also, the board members that have students in the schools, I don't see them attending those meetings. I've attended all of them so far, and I will tell you one thing that the community does not look forward to is more transitions. They talk to doing a K3, then a 5-6, what was it? No, 3-5,
Yeah.
K2.
Yeah,
And I
K2
said,
too.
less transitions. That's one of the reasons why I think the middle school, that vote that was flip-flopped in August, the 6th grade really should have been going to the middle school. I did listen to the former candidates that you did.
Right.
Every one of them went to a middle school that was K8.
Right.
Get real. I mean, less transitions for kids.
You mean
No, they should. The 6th grade should have been at the middle school
right.
prior
so
to
it's
now. It should have been
so
6th
it's
grade.
K5, then it's K5, 6th
Yeah,
through 8th.
yeah, it's 6th through 8. So they were doing K2 and then 3
Right,
through
that was
5.
another idea.
But then the parents and the PTA were saying that would be more transitions.
Right.
I firmly believe that Pine Tree should not close due to the fact it's the newest school. John Fuller, the age of it, the location, and I always go back to when I say this: buildings do not teach kids. Staff do.
Right.
It's not the building, and it's So I think
Right.
that it needs to get over. I think a lot of it has a lot of parent issue. It's not students. Students are resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Being
let's
in the field as long as I have, no.
All right, so let's move on to the budget. All right, this
Okay.
is a little complicated, so I'm going to try to set this up. So the operating budget, as presented, is actually down like 1.5%, right? And it's down $1.5 million. No, the operating budget. I'm
1.9.
sorry. Refresh my memory, Randy, but it's down a little bit. But the only reason why the operating budget is down is because the bond for the new school is retired. So the actual money's up. Right,
You're
in terms
right.
of the budget's up. But as presented to the voters, that part's down. But when you include all the special articles, which are the union contracts and maintenance and all that kind of stuff, the whole thing together represents an increase of about 5%, 5.5%, all right? But at the same time, on the operating budget, for the first time in many, many years, that I can remember anyway, there'll be a default budget, which is $1.5 million less than the school budget. So voters are going to have a choice between those two. So Jason, which would you support? The school budget or the default budget, which is $1.5 million less?
Well, that's a hot button topic because if I say I don't support the budget, then I'm against teachers. And if I say I do support the budget, then I'm against taxpayers. So it's kind of a hot spot. But I want to say—
And that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it is a hot spot. But what I do want to say is the integrity of the budget is really important. What the budget is, I mean, teachers are phenomenal in this district, and they can do a lot with a little. And I've seen it over and over and over again, and I believe in them. But what's interesting is a year ago when we had the $40 million budget up for vote, I posted publicly that I didn't believe we should be voting for that because I didn't believe it represented an actual honest budget. I thought the culture was saying that we are going to have issues that where we're going to lose or eliminate programs and staff. And I said it very clearly, publicly, posted online. And I said, we shouldn't be voting for this budget because I don't believe it's a good confidence vote.
What was the alternative?
I don't remember what it was at the time. There was it was 40 million and
But the budget last year was very close. I mean, it was the only the operating budget and the fall budget were close. So when
they were. But so my point in that is that a year later, we're returning $3 million to the taxpayer,
Right.
which is what I predicted publicly a
I
year
see.
ago. So whatever the budget is, I just want it to be honest so that the taxpayers know that we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do.
Right, but that budget, and I'm going to defend the administration, I don't know, Randy would say the same thing, is that they have to make a budget that's 18 months out, and a lot of that $3 million that came back, which they didn't spend, by the way, the school board could have spent it, and you guys didn't, is that was for positions unfilled. So, anyway, so does that mean you would support the default budget this time, because it's lower?
Well, so I support a budget that's honest.
Okay, well,
that's
which
where I'm at.
which one is the most honest
They're both
to you?
good budgets.
Okay, so you're going to have to make a checkbox on the ballot.
Well, I mean, I will, and voters will have to decide which one they want to go for.
Okay, but you're
they're
running
both,
for the school board, so I think it's important that people know which one you'd vote for.
Well, it's important to let the voters know that whichever budget we get, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to provide the optimal value for what the budget we get is. So I'm not going to be hindered or supported either way with either budget. They're both going to be successful.
You sound like a politician, Jason. I've asked it 3 times, and you still haven't answered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want to say which one you'd support.
I support them both.
Okay. Randy, take a shot.
I hope that the community appreciates the fact that it went, when I saw what the other candidates stated, they would not tell you a school to close. I, hands down, been on the facility committee long enough that I do believe it should be Pine Tree. I do believe that the budget, that the default budget could be fine. It could even go to the point where you wouldn't have to close a school. Would it be the easiest one to do? Yes. Do we have to cut co-curricular? No. Do we have to cut the arts? No. Right now in that budget, we have 42 positions that haven't been filled since December. Those funds are going to be going back into the general fund, and it will probably go back to the taxpayers. Teaching in Kingswood, I can tell you this is what they do. They have a regional district. All of those communities, they per pupil spending. This district's going to probably have to look at this. I believe that the community should vote for the default budget. There's 2 things that could happen. Right now at the high school, I voted no on that budget. Amy Snow did. Mike DeGrogario did first. And so after the deliberative, they swapped the vote. Amy Snow and I still voted no on it because I think it's bloated. I think that there's a lot of positions. I don't believe that the ESSER positions at the high school should be changed over into, like, they're eliminating a science position, they're eliminating a phys ed position, they're eliminating a half-time math position. Those positions, as a taxpayer in this district, those positions should not be taking over where ESSER funds were. The positions that are being added, I think, are unnecessary, and I think that that's additional funding that should be going toward the default budget.
All right, so speaking of that, on the Melanie LaBelle, who's running for one of the one-year seats, and she's got 4 kids in school, so she would be, the usual profile is someone who'd just be pro-school 100%. But she was interesting in the sense that she thought that 2 things. One is that there's a big discipline problem in school, and also she thought it was top-heavy administratively. So, Jason, you have any instincts about that? I know your wife's involved with education, obviously.
Yeah.
But what about the discipline problem, and what about this idea that we have too many administrators, and I'm not even sure what that means, actually.
Sure. So here's what's interesting, and I'm here to change the conversation where we've been beating kind of the same drums for a while, and we keep talking about discipline for the students, that there's a behavior discipline problem, and I'm going to reflect that back onto the adults and the administrators to set the culture. When kids don't feel comfortable and they see adults trading political favors at their expense on board positions and watching things that don't make sense, quality judgments that don't seem rational, when they're watching that happen, they become very uncomfortable with the adults in their environment. And so the test scores and the behavior in the school is, I'm putting it all on the adults. And if we don't fix that, we're not fixing anything. So building, no building, if the adults don't improve, we're in trouble.
When you say the adults, you mean parents or the school officials, school administration?
Administration, the school board, yeah. The kids are watching political back channels be the dominant culture, and the concern about the kids has vanished. People are working.
You're saying from the concern about the kids from the administrators has vanished?
Yes.
And why? Like, why would you even say that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm behavior science background.
Sure.
So I look at behavior and I tell you, hey, here's what the result is going to be from that. And I've done it time and time again. And I've been very vocal, and I've talked about, hey, here's the behavior I'm seeing. This is the result. And that's happening time and time and time again. And so there's stuff happening in the background of that, the moral and ethical pursuit that administrators are taking is really tough on both the adults that work in the community and the children who watch it happen. They are experiencing what's happening. And we're not hiding it from them.
Can you be more specific, though? I mean, part of this is that, and all the candidates have said this, is that the makeup of the student population has changed over the last 20, 30 years. Just a lot more disadvantaged kids. And that could be, add some complications and make teaching more difficult. So, like when you say, you're almost talking about like they're just, the administration's incompetent, and how they're dealing with the kids' behavior, but can you be more specific of what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. Well, in my view, unaware. I would say not necessarily incompetent, but they're focused on other things, and they're trying to put Band-Aids on gaping wounds. So, just even for example, looking at my wife's position, just out of the entire staff, she was selected to be fired or basically put down to part-time. And I don't know a teacher or an educator in the community that could do more. That could be, she is phenomenal and fantastic. And then we have a band director retiring, and she's the art teacher. So we're going to cut her to part-time, and the band director is going to retire. So what does that say to everyone about the arts program from the administrative point of view?
How would you fix all that?
Well, she's that one problem. My wife would be phenomenal as the band director.
Right, so we don't want to bring on the personal stuff.
Well, right,
general,
but you, for that problem specifically.
Right.
But I think being open and honest about what's going on would be step one.
Okay.
The children don't trust what's happening.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. Randy,
okay.
What do you think of administration?
I think the administration in general is top heavy. At the high school specifically.
Like, what does that mean? Can you name positions? And
so
I'm asking because I don't
You're probably
literally
aware
know.
of it. You follow me that I did not go the route of deans. And so they have a upper dean and a lower dean. I didn't vote for either one because I think that a vice principal and a principal within the size school that we have would be sufficient to handle the discipline. And be firm. I don't think the administrators and I say, toe the line, be firm. You have school resource officer. We've have layers there, and I think that we just firm. They have hallway monitors. I think do the positions, be firm with the students, and that's hold the line.
What about the idea of the Eagle Academy? And when I interviewed Mike DiGregorio, the chairman of the board, because the Eagle Academy used to be outside, and then it was inside, and I understand is that those kids, a lot of those kids don't want to be in school basically. So that's where a lot of the trouble originated from.
I was upset with the fact that the Eagle Academy went from
in
the evening to the day without a lot of the school board even knowing, being aware of it.
Because Mike didn't know why either.
Do you know why? No, and then we don't really, as a board, I can tell you, you want to be, I like having transparency. Most of the times, as a board member, and I've been there long enough, you really have to ask the difficult questions.
So what do you think should happen, Randy, on
I
Eagle
firmly
Academy?
believe that the Eagle Academy should have stayed the way that it was. I think Dick Clement had a good handle on it when he was on the board, and I think that it was a great program. Students often have to work during the day. They were doing the educational piece at night. They didn't want, there were other needs. And
so
I
where
think
is it now? It's in
It
house,
is in
right?
school, and I'm very glad that it's in school. And then when I was at the meeting, I asked the questions point blank, how is this working for you? It is working for that those individuals that are in that program. I'm very happy for that. I'm glad it is. I'm glad that we didn't go off campus. I thought that was ridiculous, the idea of it going off campus when we're looking at closing a school.
What about them being associated with the discipline problem, the Eagle Academy kids?
That, Mark, I think that I don't have a good handle on if those individuals are some of the kids that created the discipline problems at the school. I think that they just needed different programming. I think that that's how I believe it. Even as an educator, not all students learn the same way. I think it's a good program, and I'm glad that they came to the board, and then they stated what was happening, why it's working for them.
Jason, thoughts on the Eagle Academy?
Oh, I love Eagle Academy. I don't know why it was a program that was eliminated in the beginning. That was shocking to me. So, you know, creating a problem that we're now fixing is odd. Like, why did we make a problem and then now we're fixing it? Like those students and so I mentioned this before, but I've mentioned it now that my background's behavior science. But I started in a locked facility with adjudicated youth. And we ran a full school in there. And I'll tell you what, no learning is possible if you don't have Maslow's hierarchy of needs in place. If they don't feel safe, loved, cared for, they're not learning anything. I'll tell you that right now. So, and that's not an invalidation of anybody. That's just human. Like, if we're not taken care of, we're not going to be able to build any kind of knowledge or critical thinking or higher skills on top of that. And we're not all built the same. Students are built differently. They're built differently from each other, and their needs are different. I mean, if you didn't eat for the past 3 days, how excited would you be for this interview?
Well, that applies to all the kids in school, frankly, because there are a lot of kids that need basic care.
Yeah.
So, and just to give people perspective, how many kids are in the Eagle Academy? It's only like 15 or 20.
It is, Mark.
Right, it is that few.
You know, that came about, and I didn't even know about it until Malcolm Badger came to the school board as a community member, and we were discussing Eagle Academy. I was appalled at the fact, as a board member, that sometimes it's the untimely dissemination of information, that's what I call it, when you get what's going around. And even as board members, and I'm pretty astute, and you know, both of us have educators that are in that school system, that, you know, what we find out after the fact, before things happen. That was one of the big ones. And they said it was because of COVID. Well, you know what? No. I think that as a board member, we should have known what was going down.
What's your philosophy? We're talking about administration, and you know, I'm sure you guys read Bill Marvel, and he's always talking about the test scores and the fact that our student to teacher ratio is very low or high, depending on how you want to define it. So Jason, what's your philosophy on that? I mean, we have way fewer number of kids than we used to, but we have a lot more teachers.
Yeah. So you mentioned Bill Marvel, and it's odd because he's attacked my family a few times. But his last few articles, you know, as I read them, I'm like, oh my God, I agree with what he's saying. Like,
wow.
So it's been quite a. I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I was going to support a Bill Marvel column, I would have been like, there's no way. But it's been a little bit shocking to, you know, finally see, like, hey, let's get rid of the fringe stuff and just talk about what, you know, the healthy perspective of what's happening and how that impacts the community. And he has a wonderful history, mind, so he can look at past references.
What do you think? I mean, as you know, both of you know, that at the deliberative school meeting, he ended up in a little bit of a discussion with the attendees, because he brought up this idea of that we're abandoning the humanities in favor of the technical classes. Do you have, Jason, a sense on what's more important? And I know the obvious answer is both, but do you think the humanities has to be improved, or the career tech, or both, or either?
So first, obviously he lost in that discussion the way that he presented the information. He got absolutely annihilated. So I tip my hat for trying to say what he was saying. And it was his wife was at the meeting
Ellen,
too,
yes.
And she made a beautiful statement about humanities and the arts. And I from reading Bill's columns, I think that there's a core in there that he does believe in the arts, like they are important. So for me, the arts are the future. And right now, my wife is working on her doctorate, and so I've been a research assistant, and I've been reading a ton about AI. And honestly, one of the big concerns is reading, writing, and math. And I want to emphasize, I think that's critical for the future. So when you talk about, the arts, like computers are doing the thinking now. We have to introduce our humanity into what's happening. And every day they're talking about how jobs are just being shifted and transformed, and how can corporations and shareholders eliminate positions and jobs, by the use of AI leveraging. And so we have kids going into a future where everything that we're doing now, like what this podcasting is critical. This video that we're doing right now, that's the future. And if you can't read and write and understand the difference between what the computer is telling you and what you know as a human being, we're not going to get anywhere. So if we don't explore the arts, it's not going to be a very rounded education.
All right, Randy.
From the achievement perspective, Mark?
Well, from the let's go to the original question of, do we have too many? What your philosophy on teacher-student ratio, and then bring into the Bill Marvel critique that we're letting the humanities down.
So people don't particularly enjoy Bill Marvel, but when he does the write-ups and he looks at numbers, numbers don't lie. Our PSAT and our SAT scores are in the 30s. That's pathetic, considering that, when I look at the K through 8 system, and some of the classrooms have around 14 to 15 students in them, our scores compared to other districts are low. The math scores are in their 30s. This is the first year ever, and I think we need to look at the programming they're doing at John Fuller that reseeds 67. Some of the candidates that are running for these positions, when they say it's and this bothered me as an educator, when they say it's a snapshot, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. It's not a snapshot. When you're taking those tests, it matters, because you are being compared to other districts in this state, compared nationally, the tests that they're taking. It's not just a snapshot, it's a performance. When community members want to move into here and and buy in Conway, you can be sure that they're looking at the test scores. And so the ratio of the per pupil in classrooms, it's low compared to...
Low as in there's fewer. It's a low ratio.
Okay, Mark, an example is this. When we were moving the 6th grade to the middle school, and people were concerned about teachers, there were 2 6th grade teachers per classroom, per school. So that means 6 teachers. Next year in the 6th grade in this district, there's around 82 kids.
Right, so
you
do the
take
math,
82
that's like 12
kids
apiece,
divided
right?
by 6 teachers,
13.
that's minimally. Right. And so you would think as a community that your scores would be higher.
Yeah,
Think about it.
I've always thought there's a minimum, and believe me, I'm the last person going to speak about educators, but I always thought there had to be a critical mass to have a good rounded classroom. Like you have too few, you don't get enough participation,
You're
too
right.
many is chaos. So Jason, what do you think about the number of kids per class?
Well, so there's all kinds of, you could go one way or
Right.
the other with number of kids in class. I think if you have a skilled educator, you can manage a lot of kids. My wife's handled 60 and 70 kids in a classroom. So not that that's ideal. That's not, but if you do have too few, you don't have the interaction. The students aren't learning from each other. And then, I could use, so what we figured out about like just dance team was that right around 15 kids was, you started to have these sort of fringe things start to occur if you tried to go above that. And so, not that, but that's a performance group,
Right,
yep. So you're looking for people that are trying to make a team and that sort of thing. But in the classroom, I think 20 is a comfortable number most of the time, unless there's bigger issues. If the teacher can't manage the classroom, or like we have a lot of issues, like the COVID problem and the socialization and trying to get kids, back into reading and writing and things. We're behind as a community in supporting them to do that. So you put 20 kids in a classroom that are unprepared to engage in the lessons, that's gonna be problematic.
How important do you think test scores are? Randy seems to suggesting that they're very important.
Yeah, we shouldn't dismiss them. They are a massive indicator of what's going on underneath. They don't prove anything for everyone, but they certainly are a massive indicator. And to me, I don't look at whether they're good or bad. I look at why were they good or bad, and what are we missing the opportunity for, and that's what should be spoken to. We should be talking about what did we miss that we scored low. Not that's just a snapshot. It doesn't say anything. Well, it says to me, first of all, that students weren't motivated. Perhaps for one, they either weren't motivated to be a part of a culture that that believed in what they were doing, which is problematic, or they weren't educated in a way to do what they were supposed to be doing, and which is problematic. So, and I'm okay with that as long as we're open and honest and say, hey, we missed the ball here. Here's where we're weak. Here's where we could improve. Here, you know, that's criticism that comes back. And when we say, oh, it doesn't matter, that invalidates both the students and the families and the communities.
One thing, and Randy and I are both on the superintendent search committee, so that's full disclosure. But the candidates that we interviewed, they all said, in fact, when I interviewed Kevin Richard, he said the most important thing is growth. And it's kind of a word that I know what it means, obviously, but I didn't quite get it in an educational context. What do you think about that when administrators say, well, the most important marker is growth?
Yeah, so Mark, get this. So at the Republican committee meeting the other night at the Lobster Trap, I brought this up. And the budget committee did a super job this year in looking for research and I guess what I would say is, okay, how am I going to support this budget? They asked a question that was important, I thought. They asked the SAU 9, how many students have been retained in K through 8 for over the last 5 years? 0. Do you know, I taught in...
You mean to say retained, you mean kept back?
Kept back and 0. And so the district, this district has really low scores and not being proficient. And so when I was in Freiburg, one year I taught at the elementary schools. They retain students that don't meet the standards. And each year, students were retained. And SAU in this district, 0 and 5 years in K through 8. That tells me that they really need to look at standards, because if a student, you're not doing the student any favors if you're just passing a student on from grade to grade, because it will show up after a while, and that student, it will make a difference in the end if they don't have their basic reading, their writing, and their math skills.
Where does that, I don't want to get too far in the weeds with this, and Jason, I'd like you to get your thoughts quickly on the retaining kids, but how does that, where's that policy come from? And Randy, I'll ask you.
It's board policy.
School board policy.
Yeah, in May, and I kind of knew this, and I was wondering why we never saw a student retained in this district. Do you know, in being in Freiburg, and I'll put it right out there, you want to do a comparison, students were retained consistently if they didn't meet standards at grade level, because once you go on to the next level, no, I'm sorry, you're losing that whole year. And they really do need to look at that. It's board policy.
Yeah, okay, Jason, quickly on the retention.
So in terms of leadership, one of the things is you have to find out what your people need and help them with it, not ignore it. And so when we talk about retaining students, holding them back, that's a punishment, and that's a failure on the part of adults. And so we're at a position where a student isn't meeting a standard. So what does that student need? Can we please help that student? Holding them back is a social catastrophe.
What's the alternative if the student isn't performing up to grade?
Well, if I took it on an individual basis, I would find out what that student needs. So if it's reading comprehension, then I'm going to try to give that student every reading comprehension support that I can.
But I can't believe that, and regardless of what you guys are saying, which I generally agree with, there are special ed teachers out there and aides that are listening to this and saying, you guys are nuts, because they are getting lots of attention. So the question is, what do you do even when that happens? Right?
So Mark, so the fact that being in the world of special ed, we retained in Freiburg students that were in special ed. And so this district, I don't think it's unheard of. And K through 8, since I've been on the board, I don't think I've seen one student be retained. And so that tells me why the scores, the academic scores are low, is that they really, and I do understand you're receiving students from families that might not have the ability to help their students learn to read or do basic math, but the school system has to pick up the ball. But you do not do a favor to any child if you continually social promote them to the next grade by not utilizing the services you have in the school.
All right, Jason, is there any situations where you could see holding a student back?
Again, I would put that back on as a failure of leadership. If you put it in a military concept, no man left behind. You're going to do whatever it takes as a leader. And if we start to let them know, I'll do whatever it takes. And I've been in the education environment. I did whatever it took. And I would go home at night, research, study. I would find scholarly perspectives. I would reach deep into my compassion about what can I do to support this student to help them acclimate to the situation that they're in. Not everybody can do that. I happen to have a bit of a knack for it, so I wouldn't put that expectation on anybody. But I would always look, if a student was held back, I would always look at myself first.
Okay, let's leave it at that. And we mentioned superintendents, and again, Randy and I are on the search committee, and it's been reposted. We interviewed a couple candidates, and it's been reposted just so viewers know. But Jason, for both of you, what qualities do you think? I mean, this is a transitional, some people call it transitional, some people call it a little bit of a chaotic time in the whole school system. Jason, what do you think, what qualities would you like to see in a superintendent?
So in terms of, and I'm going to fall back on leadership, one of the leadership characteristics is to be able to communicate clearly a vision. And so I thought about this, especially after the Republicans hosted the candidate meet. So I had time to reflect. I've got a bit of a cold, so I was low energy that day, and I missed some things. But one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize was that I will communicate clearly. There's a TV series, Band of Brothers.
Sure.
And so many people, many millions of people immediately recognize that. And there's a character, Major Winters. Major Dick Winters is the character in that series. And as I was working on leadership papers, I went back and used him as a model to explain, leadership qualities. And I would say that's the model. That is somebody who cares about their troops, that cares about integrity. He stands, even when it is there's plenty of scenes where, he does the right thing, even though it might cost him. So if we're looking for a superintendent, I would look for major winners everywhere. And I know that you're a proponent of money doesn't matter. And I would, if we found major winners, pay him whatever he wants. Because we need leadership in this district so desperately that nothing else would be a criteria for me. If we don't have somebody that can come in and be firm and leaderful, then and I know education is a big component.
Does that mean that somebody has to be experienced? In other words, do we, and this is a totally hypothetical, and Randy, same to you, is that do we need someone who's got many years experience as a superintendent, or because the alternative to that is you might have assistant superintendent who's looking to move up, he or she, and have a lot of energy. Do you have any sense about what we need at this point?
Yeah, you can transfer out leadership qualities and not pretty quickly if you've got a good sense.
All right, so Randy, why don't we go to you?
Okay, so
we have to be careful because we can't spill any beans.
Myself, Mark. Well, I'm at a point where it's like I firmly believe that people on a committee should not be on a committee that are going to be hiring your own boss. And so I'm very familiar because I have a leadership degree. I do in a master's. I chose not to go into leadership because I love working with students. That's why. But boy, I can see what happens being on the board. And so I do believe the people that should be selecting the new superintendent should be community members that are on a board that are not answerable to their boss if you're hiring someone. So I'm putting that right out there because this is how I feel. The leadership role is important because if you don't hire someone that is in a leadership role and they're complacent to a system, the system will stay the same and will run the same, and it's not answerable to a community.
And just so people know, and I'm not being judgmental here because I'm on the committee, but there are only two people who on the committee, me being one of them, and Gail Prelli and Bartlett being the other, who have nothing to do with the education, the school system. It's you guys, the school board members, and Pam Stimson, and Amy Fichette, who are, and that's what you're referring to, who are basically hiring their own boss. Yeah.
Or the principals on the committee. I've just never seen it.
You're right.
I'm familiar with that. So why I'm saying that is because I took educational leadership. Yeah. I have a master's in it. It's unheard of, Mark. Usually the people that hire them are the people that are on boards or are community members, but not the ones that I guess I'm just putting it right out there because I do get the district that I met my wife Colebrook, they just hired a new superintendent. They went to the NHIA Superintendent's League, and then the people I noticed that hired that, they weren't members of the.
It does seem to be a little peculiar. I agree with that.
Interesting.
But let's put
Can I
that.
just talk
Yeah,
on
no,
one
go
note
ahead.
about
Yeah.
the leadership?
Yeah.
Some people who have put a lot of time into leadership miss the boat completely, and they have no understanding of leadership, even though they've put a lot of time into it. And so what we're missing is that, and what Randy is talking about is if we have people hiring their own boss, and that's not appropriate. But in a leaderful environment, it is, because it's, so what Randy is saying is we don't have a leaderful environment. We have people that are afraid that they're going to be retaliated against, and that's not leaderful. That is the opposite. If people, and students see that. I can't speak up or I'm going to be punished. I can't be honest. I can't do all of these things. And so we're teaching them to not be leaderful by saying we're not capable of being leaderful. And so if we had a leaderful culture, everybody on that board, regardless of position or rank, would feel absolutely comfortable making any decision at any time. And and I could explain that with tons of examples. But I just want to be clear that when I say leadership, it's not what Randy is talking about. I'm talking about real leadership.
Okay, very good. And Dick Winters, by the way, was a real person.
Yes, he was.
And he
Yes.
died about 10 years ago.
And,
All right,
yes.
so let's go on to charter schools. I mean, how much do you think that they're basically draining some of our best and brightest from the high school? And what's your general philosophy on charter schools, Jason?
So I believe in public schools. I honestly and truly in my heart do. They're a critical role for society. But charter schools aren't a drain on anything. And so when we talk about closing a school, in my heart, I closed Pine Tree School a long time ago. And I opened Northeast Woodland Charter School for my son. And
Does your son go there?
he does.
Okay.
Yes. And it was a far more leaderful environment for him. That is what I wanted him to experience. Because what I found was every day I had to process with my son about what was happening around him, and there were teachable moments every day. But when he said he didn't want to be him anymore, because it was just had gotten so bad.
You mean in the public school?
In the public school, one night he said, "I don't want to be Calvin anymore," and as a parent, my heart was destroyed. I'm teary right now.
Sure,
Just like
sure.
that was. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Randy, what do you think about, you can come back to it. What do you think about
Okay.
charter schools?
Here's my take on that. Being on the tuition contract agreements, and I'm putting this right out to the community, you're not going to find, and me as a candidate, a person that doesn't know exactly what's happening at the school district being on there so long. The tuition contracts, I firmly believe the high school's paid for, a $1.9 million bond gone away.
Right.
The fact is that all of these sending schools have purchased and paid for that facility. At this point, with school choice on the plate with this state and where we're going, we have over 80 students that are at the charter schools. That's a lot. 80 students in Conway at the charter schools. So the sending schools.
I thought you must know this, Jason. I thought Woodland had like 120.
No, from Conway.
Oh, okay.
There's
Got it.
Conway alone. There's
Right.
over 80, and so I've looked at where they're coming
Yeah, yeah.
from. The tuition contracts or what, and then we have contracts with these districts, and then being on the tuition contracts, it's going to be school choice right now. I was on the board and I really didn't understand what happened at this point because, like I said, would they disseminate information at the point where the decisions that were made? Wakefield at one point came to Conway and the school board down there and asked us if we were interested in taking tuition students. The board at that time, really, I don't think the rest of the board members, got what was happening. They would transfer kids up here not at our expense. We would accept the tuition, and I think this is where we're going. We probably should have accepted Wakefield to have the kids come here per pupil spending. I will tell you, Mark, that on that a community member should watch. I firmly believe no district that's sending students to this school system should pay less per pupil spending than when Conway pays. Right now, I do believe, Jackson and Freedom, they're paying about $30,000 per pupil
They
to
pay a
come
lot.
to come to our school
Right, they
system.
pay a lot.
And so we need to up the ante on the achievement scores on that. We need to look at programming and what will attract them to Conway.
Right.
Because the tuition contracts, I think, the way that school's choice is, It's going to be a real issue.
Right, because just to kind of put a little perspective on that, I mean, the contracts are coming up in 2 years for the sending towns, and right now, towns pay on a per pupil cost, and basically their property valuation.
Right,
Right,
35-65.
Right, so with Bartlett and Jackson, which has not a lot of kids, but a lot of property,
You're right.
they pay a lot.
They do.
So, Jason, and we have towns, I think Moultonborough is already sending some kids.
They are. 6 kids will be going there next year. Conway will lose $93,000 on just 6 students. So, Mark, what I'm saying, you know what's going to be the big draw of these communities is our vocational center is amazing. The tech center is amazing. They will not get such a tech center in any other facility around here. I think Conway needs to do something to attract them, but hands down, they should be paying per pupil spending. And what I think you'll see, Scott Grant said this. He said that that's where they're going. 35-65.
Bartlett wants per pupil because it'll be less expensive. It'll be less expensive for them.
I think so, and but the problem with Conway is that we have the facilities, and that's an issue. But they are our facilities. The other districts have paid for them. Per pupil spending at the high school, it's less than state average. It's less than $500 per state average. But if you look at our elementary schools and our middle school, it's way up there. Albany, and I'll put it right out there. As a Conway citizen, I was appalled to find that Albany pays $3,500 less per pupil spending at the high school and at the elementary school to have their students come here. Well, they should be paying per pupil spending.
Right, but they have a lot of kids and property value isn't worth as much. They got a lot of force. Anyway, this is we got 7 or 8 minutes left, so I want to give you both of you.
Real quick,
just hold on a second. I want to give both of you an opportunity just to wrap it up and basically a closing statement. But Jason, and it's very complicated about the sending towns.
That's our time to it.
We got, like I said, we have 7 or 8 minutes. So you'll get like 2 or 3, all right? You're getting the papers out, but it's got to be somewhat short. Jason, any thoughts on the sending towns and the fact that some of those kids are leaving?
Yeah, so, and that'll actually connect with the last thing, so it dovetails. If we fix the culture, people are going to want to come here. And, so in terms of the sending towns, I would be terrified if I was looking at the chaos that our district is in right now. And I would say, what other opportunities are available? We have no idea what's going on over there. Let's give them a vision. That's what we need to do. We need to give them the vision that we are a good district to come to. So what are our key points? And right now, everybody's talking about what's not working, but what are we going to do that does work so that we can, we're on a timetable right now. We really have to start to be open and honest with them about what we plan to do, or else they're going to make good decisions, which is, I'm not going to that place that's in disarray. I'm going to go someplace that's stable and quality. And so that's interesting too. Mr. Davison said that we have a high quality tech program, and with the Pathways program, the idea is to get kids out into the community and do work outside of the tech program. So I don't know if I was a community.
And Pathways program is what?
So that's getting kids out of the school and
is that good or bad? Pathways.
There are good things and bad things.
Is that a real program?
Yeah.
Or is there a Pathways? What is
it? It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So it's 100% what the high school is doing right now. They instituted it finally last year, but they've been on the move to get there.
And that's to get kids working. I mean,
Yeah, so essentially, and then because they missed the ball on getting the district aligned with Pathways, they've got kind of like work camps that are going on where they can go be pilots, and those are the marquee ones. Like, oh, we've got a space program, kids aviation, but really what it boils down to is construction, restaurant, retail. So, for example, we have a great chef at the culinary program at the high school. Yeah, he's amazing. He was a mentor to me when I was younger, and I look up to him in many, many, many ways. And so, if in the spirit of Pathways, we would be getting rid of him and sending kids to work in restaurants for their education experience. And I'm not saying that will happen or won't. And it can certainly.
That's a concern to you.
That's a huge concern to me.
All right, so I'm going to have to cut you off because we're literally running out of time. You want to just talk about the Pathways, Randy, just for 30 seconds? What your take is? Because I've never heard of that.
I'm fine with Pathways, but I don't particularly like how the schedule is run at the high school, and I've been very adamant about that.
And the schedule is, so the kids, like during regular classroom time, they go work on Outside?
That frequently happens, but it affects the overall programming of all departments. And so because of the lower enrollment of, we've gone way down.
All right, so that's another, that
So
could be
that's
another
an
whole-
issue.
yeah,
Pathways
that's
is an issue, and the district's going to have to deal with that.
All right, so a couple of minutes, sort of a closing statement, if you will,
Okay.
Randy. Yeah.
So currently, Conway faces the task of hiring a new superintendent who will need to face the challenges of inadequate test scores, lower enrollment, and aging and overabundance of facilities, in addition to tuition contracts that are expiring that will lead to school choice when towns are reviewing their options as to where parents would like to send their students. It's obviously, I've been in education quite a while here. If I was to say it, this is my 40th year teaching. I don't normally put that out there, but I am. I'm totally enjoying.
How come I got all the gray hair and you didn't?
Kingswood. I don't know, because I think I really love what I do. And I really love kids exceeding and succeeding in school. I'm passionate about the field. I want to see our schools thriving. I want to see people coming to Conway and because of our school system. Mark, when I first moved here with my wife Therese, we could have selected Freiburg. Freiburg's scores at that time were pitiful, abysmal. Dan Lee comes along and changes the whole direction. We were in Conway. Conway used to be one of the top schools in the state 30 years ago in scores, in addition to the salary, teacher salary. Now it's way down. The scores have plummeted. We have low enrollment. We have facilities that need to be helped. Our district really needs to focus on academic scores, programming. Currently, academic scores take a back seat. They really do. We talk too much about facilities and what really needs to happen. Academic achievement needs to be the top forefront in what's happening. If you want new families to move into Conway, that's one of the things. I selected Pine Tree to stay open because that's where all the development's happening. That's where probably I put it out there. Parents come forward. They come to the school board meetings. They go to those parent meetings. I'm seeing that. And I think that that's why I selected Pine Tree to stay open. It's the newer school. I mean, I don't put it out there like Bill Marvel. I do my homework. I do my numbers and I crunch them and I see what's happened here. I think if we address the academic scores, we look at the tuition contracts, we keep people within the valley that and per pupil spending, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Randy. Jason?
Yeah, so before I forget, Randy does a lot with numbers, and so certainly crafts his message very carefully around that. So he's got a lot of numbers. I wouldn't say genuine about what those numbers mean. I'm going to close with how we treat teachers is what we teach students, and how we treat teachers is the business card that we give to the state and the nation about our teachers and our community and who we want here. And how we treat them is the type of leaderful people that we plan to attract. So I've put myself on center stage so people can see how people talk to me when I'm willing to stand up, when I'm willing to say things that are open and honest. And the students are watching how people are treating me. And I'm probably the first person that has stood up and said, I'm going to listen to the students. I'm going to hear your voice. I'm going to stand beside you. I don't think that these sometimes heinous things should be happening without your voice being heard. And when you say this is a problem, adults need to listen to you. Adults need to listen to their children right now about what's happening. And when we start to do that finally, the students will respond. And it's the key to us fixing everything else. You can talk about behavior, you can talk about scores, but until we as adults improve ourselves, the children are going to copy what we're doing, and we're not being successful. So I'm not putting it on them to be successful until we get our act together.
Good. Jason? Very well spoken.
Thank you.
Randy, nice to see you.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so I think we're done, and both of you, good luck. You were no shortage of words. I will say
true.
that. You're both very well spoken. Okay, thanks, Rob.